Hi there. Today is Friday, January 17th, 2025, and you are here with me for our daily Bible reading. As you can see, I have Scooby on my lap today, so he'd like to say hello. He's been particularly insistent that he sit right here at the moment. So here he sits. Thank you for joining me today. We have our daily calendar. So if you have your daily calendar, go ahead and take that out and get ready for your sticker if you haven't already put that on yet. I hope you didn't put it on just yet. You haven't quite read the story yet. And if you are interested in supporting the event, then I will send you a set of stickers as well as a printed copy of the calendar to mark off your daily commitment. But we know that that is not required, and I do have the calendar available for download for free on my site. And I will always have the link down in the description. If you have trouble with the link, the website is www.inthefamilywaycoaching.com, and you will find it there under daily Bible readings. Well, let's see here. We have our daily reading, and we're going to read about the brothers coming back to Egypt and bringing Benjamin with us today. I'm super excited to get to our story today, and we are going to see God's great provision for Jacob's family. Today, our story comes to us from Genesis 44 through 45, 43 through 45. And we are going to start, and it says that the title of this section is called Dinner at Joseph's House. You see, Scooby's nose is particularly pushy today. He wants me to keep on him here. Joseph's brothers went quickly to Egypt. They went to see Joseph. Joseph saw Benjamin there with them. So he called his chief servant. "These men will eat with me at noon today," he said. "Take them to my house. Make dinner for us." So the servant led the brothers to Joseph's house. When they saw where they were going, they were afraid. "This is because the money was in our bags," they said. "This man is going to make us his slaves. He will take our donkeys too." They stopped in front of Joseph's house, and there they talked to Joseph's servant. "We were here before to buy food," they said. "We stopped to rest on our way home, and that's when we found our money back in our bags. We don't know how it got there, who put it there, but we've brought the money back with us." "Don't worry," said the servant. "God must have put the money back in your bags. I got the money you paid before." Then the servant took Simeon out of jail, and he took Simeon to his brothers. And they all went into Joseph's house. He brought water so they could wash up, and he fed their servants. Joseph's brothers got their gifts ready. They had heard that Joseph would be there for dinner. When Joseph got there, his brothers gave them their gifts. They bowed to him. Joseph asked, "How is your father?" "He is fine," they said. Joseph looked around. He saw Benjamin. "Is this your youngest brother?" he asked. Then he talked to Benjamin. "May God bring good things to you," he said. This was his own brother. Rachel was their mother, and it was good to see him. Joseph felt like crying, so he hurried to his own room and cried. Then Joseph washed his face and came back out. He told the servants, "Bring our food." Joseph ate by himself. The brothers ate together in a group. Other people from Egypt ate in their own group, too. The people of Egypt never ate with God's people. Now, each of Joseph's brothers had a place to sit. They were seated in the order of how old they were. The one born first was the first to be seated. Then came the second and the third, and so on. Benjamin was the last. They all looked at each other. They were surprised. Then the servants gave them dinner. But the servants gave Benjamin 5 times more than anyone else. So they ate and drank at Joseph's house. Genesis 44, a silver cup. Joseph gave orders to his servant. Put wheat in the men's bags. Give them as much as they can carry. Put their money back in their bags, too, and then get my silver cup. Put it in the bag of the youngest brother. So the servant did what Joseph told him. And the next morning, Joseph's brothers got the bags of wheat. They put them on their donkeys. Then they headed home. Soon after they had gone, Joseph called his servant. Go catch up with those men right away. Tell them that I was kind to them and ask them why they were mean to me. So the servant chased after Joseph's brothers. At last he found them, and he said just what Joseph told him to say. Why would we take the cup? They asked. Last time we were here, we found money in our bags, but we brought it back. If one of us has the cup, you may kill him, and then you may take the rest of us to be your slaves. All right, said Joseph's servant. They all took their bags down off of their donkeys, and they opened their bags, and the servant began with the oldest brother. He looked in his bag first. Then the servant looked in the bag of the second brother. He looked in every brother's bag, and he came to Benjamin's bag last. And that's where he found the cup. All the brothers were very upset. They put their bags back on their donkeys, and they headed back to Joseph's house. When they saw Joseph, they bowed. What did you do? Said Joseph. Didn't you know I would find this out? There's nothing we can say, said Judah. We can't prove that we didn't do it, so we are your slaves. No, said Joseph. I will only take the one who had the cup. He will be my slave, and the rest of you may go home. Judah said, Please, don't be angry with me. But I promised that I would bring the boy home again, and if I don't bring him back, our father will die. Please, let me be your slave instead, and let the boy go home. Telling the secret. Joseph couldn't stand it anymore. He sent everyone out but his brothers out of the room, and then he told them who he really was. He cried out loud. I am Joseph, he said. Even the people outside the room heard him. They told the people at the king's house about it. Joseph couldn't stand it anymore. Is my father still alive? Joseph asked. Joseph's brothers could not say a word. They were afraid. I am Joseph, your brother, he said. You sold me to be a slave. I was taken to Egypt, but don't worry about it now. God put me here so that I could save many lives. God put me in charge here. There will be 5 more years without food. So go back and bring your families to live here. Tell our father that God made me the ruler of Egypt. Then Joseph hugged Benjamin and cried some more. And Benjamin cried and hugged Joseph too. Then Joseph kissed all of his brothers, and they talked together. The king soon heard that Joseph's brothers were in Egypt, so he told Joseph, Bring your brothers' families here to live. You can have the best land. Take carts with you so their children and wives can ride. And bring your father too. Don't worry about bringing anything else. You can get whatever you need when you get here. So Joseph gave his brothers some carts. He gave them food for their trip. He gave them new clothes to each of them, but he gave 5 sets of clothes to Benjamin. And he gave 300 pieces of silver to Benjamin too. Joseph sent his father 20 donkeys with packs on their backs. The packs were full of wheat, bread, and other food, and they carried all kinds of good things from Egypt. As his brothers were leaving, Joseph called out to them, Don't fuss and fight along the way. So Joseph's brothers went to Canaan, loaded with gifts. They told Jacob, Joseph is alive and he is the ruler of Egypt. Jacob could hardly believe it, but they told him all about their trip. They showed him the gifts, and then he said, I believe it now. Joseph is alive, and I will go and see him again. And that is the end of our reading for the day. I don't know about you, but I find that very exciting. Joseph's family, Joseph was being taken care of by God. God was providing for Jacob's family. And it's just so wonderful to see God's divine provision for this family. He sent the dream to Joseph, and sure enough, the wheat stalks that in his dream that stood up straight, and his brother's wheat stalk stood up straight around his, and they bowed before his wheat stalk. And sure enough, every time they came to see him, what did they do? They bowed to him. He was above them, and yet he was their younger brother. The only one younger than him was Benjamin. And they couldn't believe that they would ever bow to him because um, it was always the order of the oldest who was in charge. If you remember from Esau and um, Jacob, that Esau had the birthright because he was the older son. So typically, in what we see in the families in the Bible, is that the older you are, the higher ranking you are. So to see that Joseph was number 11 down the line did not seem very probable to them that they were going to be ever bowing to him because it just didn't seem logical. It was not the way things were done. And God told them from a very early age that Joseph would be the one that they would be bowing to. And we see that throughout Joseph's life, he had the heart for God. And God knew that this was going to be the case. It is Joseph who was always trying to do right. And even though he was getting back a little bit at his brothers by not telling them who he was at first, he was never unreasonably hurtful to them. He just made them a little fearful. He didn't hurt them in any way. He even paid for their food both times. He gave the money back to his brothers. And he was very happy to see his brothers, even though they had caused him to be sold into slavery. Joseph knew and could see that God was indeed using everything for good. And he told his brothers so. He said, "Yes, you sold me into slavery, but don't worry about that now because God has sent me here to take care of our families." And so he was able to see the good that God was doing in his life. And that's a heart for God. And it just makes me really happy to see that. And that is what we are meant to do as well. So I'm very passionate about that. I'm sorry. And that is why these stories are just so wonderful to see because God's provision is so wonderful. And He was providing for the family by bringing them into Egypt during the time of the Great Famine. God knew that those 7 years were coming where there would be no food. And so He provided for the family. Even though it was through these supposed bad things, He knew what was going to happen. And He had everything all worked together, all in advance. He knew. And He knows your life too. And He knows that every little thing that happens, He is working together for good. So I want us all to remember that whenever we are experiencing anything. If you have something today that is going bad, God can use it for good, and He will. So just ask God to open your heart and your eyes to see it and have faith in God because it is faith in God that makes Him happy. Joseph had faith in God that He would work things out, and He did. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that wasn't a little too long. But it was just very important to point out God's great provision and how He was providing for the family, just as He said He would. He told Jacob He would never leave his family, and He has not. So thank you very much for joining me today. If you are watching via YouTube, please click the like on that video. It helps it to gain a little bit of attention. And if you are a subscriber to my podcast, thank you for joining me today. And if you know anyone who would be interested in reading these stories and whose faith could benefit from reading about the Bible every day and hearing a little bit about what I have to say about it, then please share it with them. And let's help this event grow and spread the word about reading God's Word. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their Friday. And I will see you again tomorrow when we have our next entry, when we read about Jacob's family coming into Egypt.